In their 35-year history, the Montreal Expos only saw playoff baseball once in 1981. To their credit, they most likely would have made the playoffs in 1994 if it wasn't for the lockout, but even with that, they wouldn't have been in the playoffs the following 10 seasons to 2004. With the combination of a depleting market for baseball in Montreal and the struggling franchise, the team would decide to make the move and end up relocating to the U.S. capital and becoming the Washington Nationals. The first season in Washington was a pretty mediocre one as they finished 81-81 with their above-average pitching staff, but their offense wasn't helping them as they were 26th in the MLB by OPS+. This would be the closest the Nationals came to getting back to playoff baseball, as they would then see 6 straight seasons of missing the playoffs by at least 10 games. During this span, the Nationals also had the worst record in the league in 2008 and 2009, which landed them with back-to-back first overall picks, which they would use to take Steven Strasburg and Bryce Harper, who both just might be some of the most hyped-up prospects in baseball history. We even saw Strasburg make a few starts in both 2010 and 2011 despite getting Tommy John in August of 2010. 2012 would be a change for the Nationals as they finally broke into the playoffs by winning the NL East behind an offense that was the 8th best by OPS+ and scored the 10th most runs in the league and the 3rd best pitching staff by runs allowed and ERA+. Along with this, they had the Rookie of the Year in Bryce Harper. Sadly for the fans that waited 31 years for another playoff berth, the Nationals got beat in the NLDS by the St. Louis Cardinals in 5 games. In 2013, the Nationals would just miss out on the playoffs by 4 games, but in 2014 they would bounce back, winning 96 games and win the NL East behind the best pitching staff in baseball by ERA+ and the 2nd best by runs allowed, and a starting rotation that had all 5 pitchers post above a 1.10 ERA+. Sadly for this Nationals team, they ran into the Giants, who would beat the Nationals in 4 games in the NLDS on their way to winning the World Series. The Nationals would go to that offseason and add perennial Cy Young candidate in Max Scherzer, but in 2015, the Nationals would disappoint as a team, missing the playoffs by 7 games, but we saw Bryce Harper emerge as a star, taking home his first NL MVP trophy while posting a league-best R-WAR at 9.7, along with leading the league in OBP, slugging percentage, OPS, OPS+, and home runs. 2016 was a very hopeful year for the Nationals after bringing in Dusty Baker as manager along with the MVP on their roster and a good pitching staff, which made them hope that they could make a deep playoff run. The Nationals would win the NL East as they won 95 games behind the 2nd best pitching staff in the league by ERA+, but the offense was well below average in just about every stat category, which is why they got bounced out by the LA Dodgers in the NLDS. 2017, they would run it back with mostly the same roster, and they would win 97 games with the 12th best offense and the 8th best pitching staff, but these two combined weren't good enough once again as they lost in the NLDS, this time to the Cubs. Going into 2018, Dusty Baker would leave for Houston, and the Nationals would replace him with Dave Martinez. They hoped Dave Martinez could help guide them to the World Series as they only had 1 season left to control with their star Bryce Harper, which is why they ended up calling up their top prospects Victor Robles and Juan Soto. Despite their best efforts, the Nationals would completely miss out on the playoffs, only winning 82 games and missing out by 8 games. In the offseason, they would watch as Bryce Harper would leave to the in-division rivals, the Philadelphia Phillies, so they ended up spending their money by bringing in Patrick Corbin on a 6-year deal, who's coming off an all-star season in Arizona where he posted a 3.15 ERA in 200 innings to pair him with Max Scherzer and Steven Strasburg. They would also add some key role players such as Trevor Rosenthal, Yan Gomes, and Kurt Suzuki. The Nationals got off to a slow start, being 12 games under 500 at 19-32 and having only a 3.4% chance to make the playoffs on May 23rd. They had slowly improved and finished the first half 47-42, but they were still 5 games out of the second wildcard spot and 8 games back at the division-leading Atlanta Braves. At the halfway point, they upped their odds to having a 46.9% chance to make the playoffs, but they still had a huge mountain to climb. In the second half, they would claim the second wildcard spot after going 46-27, finishing the season 93-69. The Nationals would get a tough matchup with the Milwaukee Brewers, who the season prior had just come short of going to the World Series, but late in the season they had just lost their MVP candidate in Christian Yelich, so their door was open for the Nationals. The Nationals put Max Scherzer on the bump to face off against Brandon Woodruff of the Brewers. In the top of the first inning, the Brewers would get on Max Scherzer. Following a Trent Grisham single, Yasmani Grandal would hit a homer to give the Brewers an early 2-0 lead. They'd add another run in the top of the second inning after Eric Thomas homered as well. Luckily for Scherzer, Trey Turner would get 1 run back in the bottom of the third on a solo shot, which helped to keep him in the game until the 5th inning when Strasburg would take over. Strasburg would pitch 3 shutout innings along with the Brewers' Brent Suter and Drew Pomeranz, which led to the Brewers having an 87% chance of winning going into the bottom of the 8th inning, and with Josh Hader on the mound, it seemed almost locked up that the Nationals' season was over. But after a hit by pitch, a single, and a walk, the bases were loaded for young star Juan Soto. Soto would hit a single into right field that most likely would have only scored 1 run if it wasn't for Trent Grisham misplaying the ball and allowing 3 runs to score, giving the Nationals the lead. They'd hand the ball off to Daniel Hudson, who had shut the Brewers out, sending the Nats to the NLDS versus the LA Dodgers. In Game 1, the Dodgers would tee off on Patrick Corbin, leading to the Dodgers winning 6-0, but the Nats would bounce back in Game 2, winning 4-2. Game 3 was a pivotal one, and the Nats would send Patrick Corbin back out to start, but the Dodgers would get to him once again and score 10 runs in the game to take a commanding 2-1 series lead. Despite this, the Nationals would battle, winning Game 4 6-1 behind a great start from Max Scherzer, which set up the penultimate Game 5. The Dodgers would jump out to a 3-0 lead after the 2nd inning, but the Nationals slowly fought back, scoring 1 run in the 6th and 2 in the 8th to force extra innings, where they would tee off on Joe Kelly, scoring 4 runs, then handing the ball to Daniel Hudson once again to shut down a series and send them to the NLCS versus the St. Louis Cardinals. The NLCS would be an easy one for the Nationals as they held the Cardinals to only a 130 average in the series and won all 4 games by at least 2 runs, which set up their World Series matchup with the Houston Astros. In Game 1, Scherzer would face off with Garrett Cole, and Scherzer would get off to a bad start, giving up 2 runs in the 1st inning, but the Nationals would get them back for him, scoring a run in both the 2nd and the 4th inning, and they would take the lead behind a 3-run inning in the 5th inning, which despite the Astros putting up runs in the 7th and 8th inning, they would lose and the Nationals would take Game 1. In Game 2, the Nats would get to the Astros bullpen as they scored 10 runs after the 6th inning, which resulted in a 12-3 win for the Nats. Going into Game 3, the Nats were sitting pretty high as they were up 2 games and going to play at home, but the Nats would lose their first game to the Astros in 4-1 fashion. This set up a huge Game 4 that very well could be the most important game in the series, so the Nats would send out their all-star and big offseason acquisition Patrick Corbin, who just like in his previous 4 starts, would get shelled, and this would lead to the Astros winning by 7 runs and tying the series up at 2 games apiece. In Game 5, the Nats would send Joe Ross out to match up against Garrett Cole, but he would get outclassed as Cole would pitch 7 one-run innings in comparison to Ross giving up 4 runs in 5 innings, followed up by Daniel Hudson giving up 3 runs in 1 2/3 innings, which led to another loss for the Nats 7-1. The Nats had lost all momentum and were in need of a huge win to keep their hopes alive going back to Nationals Park. The matchup for Game 6 would be Strasburg versus Justin Verlander, and following the 1st inning runs scored by the Nationals, they looked good, but Strasburg would also struggle in the 1st inning, giving up 2 runs. This would be the only struggle Strasburg had in Game 6, although, as he would go the next 7 1/3 innings without giving up another run, and thanks to his offense putting up 6 more runs, the Nats would force a Game 7 back in Houston for a chance at their first World Series title in franchise history. Going into Game 7, the Nats would send Max Scherzer to the mound once again to face off against Zack Greinke. Greinke would pitch a shutout the first 5 innings, but Scherzer would give up a run in the 2nd and the 5th, which led to Patrick Corbin coming in the 6th inning. He'd pitch a shutout inning, but the offense couldn't get any runs, which is why the Astros had an 87% chance to win the World Series at the start of the 7th inning. In the top of the 7th, after an Adam Eaton groundout, Anthony Rendon would hit a solo home run to make it an only 2-1 advantage for the Astros. The Nationals would follow this up with a Juan Soto walk, which would take Zack Greinke out of the game and set up Howie Kendrick to face off against Will Harris. In an 0-1 count, Kendrick would do this.
That's down the right field line into the corner. This ball is gone for a home run. Nationals on top. Howie Kendrick has made it 3-2. Off the pole in right.
This homer gave the Nationals a 3-2 advantage, and with Patrick Corbin giving the Nats 2 more shutout innings, along with a run in the top of the 8th from a Juan Soto 2-out single to score Adam Eaton, and a 2-run single by Trey Turner in the top of the 9th, the Nationals found themselves with a 6-2 advantage going to the 9th, handing the ball off to their great bullpen arm, Daniel Hudson. Hudson would pitch a perfect inning along with 2 strikeouts and giving the city of Washington their first championship. This team had suffered all those years of missing the playoffs and getting bounced out in the NLDS to go on to having one of the most immaculate playoff runs that I think could best be described as never letting the odds define you. If you guys did enjoy today's video, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.